Hello, 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 and welcome to the Vagabond Way podcast. The journey goes ever on with The Long Road. This episode, the team is back at it. The first episode of Season 3 of the Vagabond Way podcast. The team is back together digitally and getting back at it. Join Steve Bonham, the Vagabond philosopher, Chris the Bish Leiden, that's me, and Kev Moore on a ramble chat through upcoming plans of new music releases and how The Long Road approaches writing and recording our Anglo-Americana music, a cinematic approach. Steve also takes us back to New Orleans with a glimpse of a new song, and Kev thinks back to the very start of his musical career. The Vagabond Way podcast featuring The Long Road is exploring the world of the troubadour, the adventurer, the vagabond. The world isn't beige, it isn't processed, it's authentic, it's rich, and it's real. If those are the sorts of sentiments that make your brain light up, then hop on board. We are embracing all of those things, we're celebrating all of that, and we'd love it if you joined us on the journey. Greetings, I am Chris the Bish Leiden, and welcome to Season 3 of the Vagabond Way podcast. It's lovely to be back, talking directly into your brains once more. We've had a few weeks off to recharge batteries and come up with plans for the future, which we'll tell you about in this upcoming episode, and some more bits in the future. Hope you're all doing well, wherever in the world you are, and whatever sort of state of lockdown your part of the world is in. This COVID-19 thing is still bubbling away, and I think a lot of us are managing to come up with ideas for new ways of doing things, trying to look for the positives where you can, and hopefully in some ways there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Anyway, this week's episode features, as always, The Long Road. That is Steve Bonham, the Vagabond philosopher, Kev, the Big Man Moore, and me, Chris the Bish Leiden. We sat down again via an online video conferencing thing to have a chat about what's coming up on the road for us, including the plans for our next recording project, which will be continuing the experiment we've been taking part in the last year or so, I guess. Rather than releasing big chunks of music at once and infrequently, the old notion of an album as a body of work, we are experimenting with releasing EPs and singles, but are on a much more frequent timeline. So there's just about always something new to be sharing with you. So more on that in the coming weeks. In a couple of weeks, we actually start our new YouTube series, so you'll actually get to see us on screen. What a delight for you all. The Anglo-Americana show, which we announced at the end of last podcast season, will feature chats and songs with musicians, songwriters, artists who are, on the same sort of path that we are. Music with one foot on each side of the Atlantic. Music that goes back to the source of the stories, narrative performing. Initially, the show will be every 2 weeks, and we're going to be releasing that on Tuesdays. So you can have an even time frame between the YouTube show on a Tuesday and the podcast on a Friday. Alongside the YouTube show, don't forget we each have a curated playlist on Spotify. Just search for Anglo-Americana and you should find them. Steve's is called just that, Anglo-Americana. Kev's is Anglo-Americana Moonshine Madness, and mine is called Anglo-Americana Daydreaming. So check them out, give them a follow, get involved. The big activity we have at the Long Road HQ right now is gearing up for the launch of our next single and the EP that will follow. And in fact, the first single has actually changed since we recorded this chat. It actually changed about an hour and a half after we finished this chat, such is the way of things. So you'll hear us say the first single is called Waiting on a Storm. Actually, the first single is going to be called On a Bridge Across the River. And then Waiting on a Storm is going to be a bit later on, along with Do You, and then the second single is going to be called If There's a God Out Here, and that's being released in about 6 weeks. Anyway, enough from me. I'm going to stop rambling on. I'm going to let all three of us ramble on together. Isn't that nice? On to the chat, and I will see you on the other side. The three of us, the Long Road, are back together after our short summer break. Hello, everybody all around the world that listens. We've got Steve Bonham.
Yeah, hey.
And we've got Kev.
Hello, everybody. What did we do on our holidays?
Holiday? Pardon?
Well, haven't left my flat for 3.5 weeks. That's what I've done.
Kev's enjoying it. stripped to his knickers on the beach every day. I mean, he's in
Oh
Spain.
yes,
So.
I'm out there living it large.
It's amazing how many pictures you managed to take and post on Facebook, Kev. That is
It is a huge amount of.
you're leading a second life as a photographer. It's remarkable.
I do seem to be. I am morphing into a kind of bronzed David Bailey.
I think it's the pap, who lives outside his front door, who follows him around.
We haven't had the last time the three of us spoke was, I think, the last episode of the podcast, wasn't it? Which was a month ago or 6 weeks ago now, I suppose. So we've had a little bit of time to recharge the batteries. We've got some plans afoot for new things. So we've got new season of the podcast that we're doing now. We're going to start doing our YouTube show in a couple of weeks as well. Got to get that going as well. And what else is on the cards? What are our plans?
Yeah, we got the studio time in October for the next, which is like it was really exciting, isn't it? That's the sort of a new round of recording. So it's the end of the American Wilderness Project is going to overlap with the start of whatever we're going to call this. The journey
The next
goes
one.
ever on. Or
So we've done EPs 1 and 2 from
Yeah.
the American Wilderness Project. So we've still got EPs 3 and 4 to come, haven't we?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeehaw. I'd kind of forgotten about 4. We were focusing so much on 3 and the new stuff.
When you do it, goes into like the sort of back room of your mind, doesn't it? Because you're focused on the other stuff.
I loved yesterday because we're working on the third EP, and those putting little extras on. It brought it back to life for me. Actually, I must have listened to Bridge Across the River about 26 times yesterday evening. Just kind of going, yeehaw! This is really good. I'd forgotten it was good, so it was good. Ace Hollerin, out there in media land, listen out for some Ace Hollerin from Kev, because these days, of course, it's brilliant. We can add bits afterwards. We can do afterthoughts.
Stuart is at this very moment, he's sharpening his razor blades and getting his sellotape out to prepare to cut the tapes.
To attack my hollering.
So the next EP is going to be out in about 3 weeks.
Well, the first track
three
is, yeah.
weeks.
First track.
The first track, yes, sorry. So we're releasing the first track, and that one is going to be called Waiting on a Storm.
Yeah.
And then the second track, I'm pushing myself here. Is the second one going to be Do You, or is it?
If There's a God Out There, I think we said.
I think it's If There's a God Out There.
And then the other 2 tracks will be Do You and
Bridge Across the River.
And those will be the 4 for this EP, and the EP, this one is called
Out of the Darkness.
Out of the Darkness.
Yeah.
Yes. Be very afraid.
It's wonderfully against trend. Apparently, the stuff out in the music biz now, the people with nice shiny faces and flawless skin are saying, we need 3-minute happy music. The world needs 3-minute happy music. So we're going 3 5-minute tracks of absolutely hardcore rage. That is it. Us on trend as usual.
An extremely flawed skin.
Yes.
There are going to be DJs weeping in horror when they hear this.
That'll teach them.
This is not a track you might put on after Tammy Wynette.
So now it's funny, the loyal listeners to our podcast have actually been listening to little snippets of Bridge Across the River for months and months and months.
Yeah,
now.
they have.
I use little bits of the instrumental version as some of the interstitial music on the podcast.
Yeah, we've introduced it to them by stealth.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the planting of a seed and it grows. What's that Jeff Goldblum quote?
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic quote. Yeah.
What is it? Oh, it's a visual gag rather than an audio
It
gag.
is,
I've realised. It
kind
doesn't
of,
really work on an audio podcast. He sprinkles his fingers and then turns it up and it grows, doesn't it? I've lost my train of thought. I was going to say something. I started thinking about Jeff Goldblum and it's gone.
Something to do with the fact they've already heard snippets of the track.
Oh yes, we've already heard stuff. So there's been little snippets all the way through this second season of the podcast of Bridge Across the River, and for me actually that song. I think that was one of the ones where we made this bold decision back in the studio to think, right, are we going to do any Hammond organ?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad we did, because I think it, especially on tracks like that, it puts it in that world.
You know what? Well, yeah, when I listened to it back for the first time, probably yesterday, when Steve was mooting the idea of overdubs, and that was when it just came in, you know, with the big Hammond chord and that. I'm like, whoa, you know, and it's like really joyous, you know. It's great. Really glad we put that on there.
So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Which tracks are you looking forward to from this next little batch?
I like If There's a God Out There, because that's to me that's another one of those, like with some of the previous tracks where we do go off the wall, you know. Yeah. Some of our there's a hinterland within the Long Road music that is a very dangerous place to tread, and I think we go there in that one.
I'm with you, Kev. I mean, you know, I think creatively and artistically, you know, to me, we're forging something that is pretty raw there, and you know, it follows the moonshine principles. You know, create something fiery out of a few simple ingredients, and I don't know any other band who do it at the moment. I just that's what, and it scares me to be. I don't know other band who would do it. So I
think you need that antithesis, though. We are the antithesis to you know, cookie cutter pop, as I call it. You know, it's we really will just chuck anything at a canvas, you know, and sometimes we'll have to remove it with the turpentine because it's not quite what we've envisaged. But I do. That's probably the thing I enjoy the most about what we do, which is the experimentation. Let's see if this goes with this. You know, it sounds ridiculous to consider it, but let's see.
And some of the things we've done in the studio as well, that have been almost last minute decisions.
I'm kind of referring to that, in fact, in the studio environment where we just sort of go, you know what?
Yeah,
let's try that. And I that's one of the favourite things of studio work for me. It always has been.
And it's one of the things I like about Stuart Jones from Woodworm. His approach to us being in the studio is he's not fazed by anything.
No, he's got a good sense of humour, which is important.
Yeah. And Stuart's Stuart's experience over the years with all kinds of different groups. I remember he was telling us about the Madrigal group that he had in. That was a new one for him. And you know, he's had all kinds of superstars in there. So actually, he's used to anything being thrown at him, and he goes with it. He goes, yeah, let's try it and see what happens. Yeah. And very occasionally, he gets this twinkle in his eye when you suggest something, and he goes, yes. And he does something. He does some unknown thing when he starts. You know that thing when he starts plugging in more wires, and you think, oh, he's turning on another machine to do something else.
Yeah, when he fires up another machine, you know you've got him. Yeah.
When those little wires come in, he starts plugging in that, and then goes, oh no, I should know that, and then you think, okay, right, Stuart's onto something.
Yeah, he's on board with the idea. Yeah.
It astonishes me how creative he is. When all he requires is a cup of tea every 45 minutes and a chocolate biscuit. I mean, other people take hard drugs, but not all Stu. Just give me a cup of strong tea.
Fair, we never have
strong tea.
We never have confirmed what's in his vape device, though.
No, we haven't.
True. I mean, I'm not casting aspersions, but we've never checked.
But I think the thing about these songs, and again, it was listening to Bridge last night. They're like movies. I love that, actually. I love that because the story's very strong and the layers are there. And what you guys bring is that kind of soundscape that makes them movie-like.
Yeah.
You know, I think if somebody says, you know, there's every time you get interviewed on the radio, who's your influences musically? And I always find a struggle to answer that question, but I've decided my answer from now on is the Coen brothers.
Yeah, great.
I think musically, that's my songwriting. You know, I try to write songs like they make films.
I'm currently watching the TV series of Fargo, which beautifully maintains the vibe of the film. And of course, you've got the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou movie that they made. It is like that, and I think when you have a lyric writer such as yourself, Steve, where quite often the lyrics do precede any music, in this genre, in other genres that I work in, it doesn't always work that way, but in this genre, it often does. I think the music always has to serve the lyric. And when the lyric is quite expansive and is very descriptive. You do have to go cinematic with it. Often it'll take you on a journey because it's a story. So you do end up with acts, individual acts.
Yeah.
And that's how the songs sometimes might start off in one place, and by the time the listener is deposited in a seething mass at the end of it, they're entirely somewhere else.
It's amazing how far you can travel in a 4.5 minute song, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So we've got a song on there about a vigilante group after a bloke who's misbehaved with the local beauty. We've got a song about making OxyContin and drugs up in the hills of Appalachia. We've got a song about the kind of rather dubious and dark past of Nashville. And then at the end of it, just to sort of let you off the hook, there's kind of what is a secular prayer, like, can we get over this?
Just so you can absolve yourself of what you've immersed yourself in. It's our equivalent of taking you to the river and washing you down.
It's going to be a good one, I think.
It's a good one.
So all that, dear listeners, is going to be heading your way from September onwards. The number of conversations me and Steve and Kev have had over the. I suppose it's been a year now since we started this project, really, back because you guys started recording that first EP.
October.
When was it?
No, August. Yeah, it's a year ago. Yeah,
and we've not agonised, but we have definitely carefully thought about what's going to go on which EP, and now because we're going to be releasing them every month, thinking about what's actually coming, what's the journey we're taking people on. So it's the sort of the artistic input. We may not have realised this before, but actually we are thinking quite filmically or cinematically in that respect, aren't we? Because it's the journey that we want to take people on. So that's what's coming up next in terms of the recording release, and then the final EP from this first batch is going to be out start of next year. I think it's going to be now, and that one is called "Looking for Gold."
It is.
And we'll have a chat about some of those tracks on another podcast, I'm sure. But also, alongside the releases of these ones, we're going to try and do some new recording things. So we've got some new songs brewing that we're going to try and get into the studio. By the end of this year, hopefully, depending on who's allowed to travel where and when. We'll get into there is much willing, but unfortunately the
airlines are weak.
And I think, Steve, you're going to do a little sort of insight into some of these new songs. In the coming weeks on the podcast. Yeah. So listeners, keep on listening out for the new stuff we've got going. Keep an eye on our social media stuff because we're going to post little snippets of things, and we want to hear from you guys and see what's floating your boat, what's tickling your fancies, because this Anglo-Americana movement that we're going for, we're trying to build this community, because there are people out there that really love this kind of stuff.
It's amazing. Yesterday I had three messages from people wanting to get on board with that. All of them finding the kind of flag they're flying under at the moment difficult, and saying, we know where you're coming from. We want to associate with that, which is just lovely,
Yeah, because it's hard to. Sometimes you need to have a label. It's not constrictive, but it's a way of just, like you say, putting your flag on the mountaintop and saying this is who we are. I think it's great that people are getting on board with that.
A section that we're going to call Songs in the Mix now, where we take a deeper dive into some of the back catalogue, or sometimes we'll give you a preview of new things to come. So this week it's the latter. Steve has got a new song to share with us, so I'm going to hand you straight over to Steve.
As we're heading towards recording again in the autumn, the job for me is to make sure we've got plenty of material to go at. And I found the best way of doing that over the years is to make it a continual process, always been working on stuff and collecting stuff. As I think I've said before, my way of doing it is to collect sounds or phrases or guitar licks and make sure I've recorded them just on the phone, and then start pulling them together over a period of time. And I'm deep in that process now. So I thought today I'd share one that we might record in the autumn. We'll see how we're going to go. I'll offer these up, and this may be the only time this song is out there. This particular song grew out of two things. One is purchasing during the lockdown this wonderful 12-string guitar from Rob Hodgson, who lives just north of me. I'd only gone to get my guitar fixed, and he just finished making this unbelievably beautiful instrument, which sounds better than any 12-string I've ever played or seen. And the great thing is, if you have a new guitar, immediately you start discovering it's got lots of songs hidden inside it. So that's kind of what I worked at. And then the second thing was this need or want over a number of years to write a song about New Orleans. I've been to New Orleans several times, and yeah, I think it's definitely the most favourite city on the planet for me. I just love everything about it. I like the whole mix of sounds and smells and sights and people and weather and history. And you know, it's not a pretend place. It's got a dark past, and it's got a complex present and a doubtful future, and I like that sense that it's a city that almost knows the foolishness of life and has given up on unnecessary distractions of race and colour and beliefs about people, and just embraced everybody in this incredible jambalaya of life. And one of the first times I went was I got there on my own. I went on my own for 4 days, meeting up once a day to walk around with an old friend, the psychologist Michael Apter, who's fairly elderly now, and so we would walk around the city at his pace and talking about the things that he knew and he saw, and it was just wonderful. We'd sit during Lover having a long lunch with a small beer, listening to jazz. He would take me into some of the old antique shops because he's very keen on that, and look at a Picasso that happened to be on sale there, and then he would head home, and I'd keep walking. And the very first day I was there, jet lag woke me up at about 4 o'clock, and I just had to get up. So I went for a walk around the French Quarter. I was staying in Le Richelieu Hotel. I went for a walk around the French Quarter at about 6 in the morning, 5, 6, and found there was a bar open, and the Golden Lantern. And the Golden Lantern, you know, there were people sitting drinking, and it didn't look like they'd been there all night. I couldn't work out whether they'd been there all night or they'd just started early. It was a 24/7 bar, and they waved me in, big smiley place. I felt, yeah, that'd be good fun. But I actually kept walking because it was just too early for a Bloody Mary, quite frankly, even though they promised me the best in the world. I found out later it was a 24/7 gay bar, and it must be one of the most mellow places I've ever seen. And it made its way into this song. I also came across the Arcadia bookshop, where the books are stacked in piles, so 10 feet high, and just everywhere. You have to climb over books and get in the book. All the books of the world. It's sounding out of, Shadow of the Window, whatever it was called, bookstore. The world's books are in this tiny little store on the back streets of New Orleans. It has a very urbane owner, and kind of the game is to ask him if he's got a particular book, and he always says yes, and then you ask him, and do you know where it is in this shop? And he go, I most certainly do, sir, and he go and fetch it. Anyway, so eventually I've got around to writing this song which is about all those experiences and the things that I've seen and enjoyed there. I love New Orleans.
So here we go, a brand new song for you all. This one is called Washed Away.
If you're gonna catch something, catch it from New Orleans, where Jimmy Beam Bolero plays in the shade of a cypress tree. Death is down on Bourbon Street, dancing in the rain. Alligator feather in his hat, twirling on a silver cane. We're gonna get washed away, we're gonna get washed away, looking for a place to play. We're gonna get washed away, we're gonna get washed away, looking for a place to stay. Ruthie heads to the Mardi Gras in her old wedding dress. Lucky beats a new best friend, smoking cool cigarettes. Tore us down from up the coast, counting up the cost. Golden lantern at 6 a.m., guessing our poor boy's lost. We're gonna get washed away, we're gonna get washed away, looking for a place to play. We're gonna get washed away, we're gonna get washed away, looking for a place to stay. Katie stands with his book so high that I'm looking for Marie Laveau. So man in there can find each one, kinda told me where to go. But hurricane came roaring in, water's piling high. Me and you keep dancing on, afraid to say goodbye. We're gonna get washed away, we're gonna get washed away, looking for a place to play. We're gonna get washed away, we're gonna get washed away, looking for a place to stay.
Hello again, listeners, and welcome once more to Kev's Cafe Corner. A hastily prepared one, I must confess, dear listeners, having forgotten about it till the 11th hour. So I've just popped in the shower and opened my mind and tried to think of something suitable. And I came upon this in the dusty, cobwebbed storerooms of my memory. Those of you of a certain age may remember a chain of cafeterias around the UK called the Golden Egg. I believe they've all disappeared from the landscape now, but they were quite the thing back in the day. And the reason why I'm going to highlight the Golden Egg today, and one particular branch of the Golden Egg, the one in the Arndale Centre of Doncaster as it was then, and a particular time, in fact, I believe it was April 1979. and it's very special to me, that place, not particularly for the fare that they served, although they really did some good egg-based delights and a very amenable cup of coffee, if I remember well. But that particular branch was where I learned that I had got the job as a professional bass player singer. And that was momentous to me when I look back at that. Perhaps in my youth I didn't quite realise the import of it, but I'd been in bands since I was 8 years old. I'd played around the pubs and clubs in the Derby area, and I'd had a job in an office in a power station for about 3 years, slowly going insane. And I started applying for jobs in the Melody Maker. And this particular one caught my eye, amongst others. I went to a few auditions, but it said bass player wanted, with vocals, Scandinavian tour, £100 a week. Now, in 1979, sat at a desk, I believe I was taking home something like £40 a week. And I thought, what do I want to do? Do I want to sit at a desk, averaging averages of the output of a boiler at a power station, for which I had no inclination nor talent? Or do I want to play the bass guitar in a Scandinavian capital? You might imagine I quickly weighed up the pros and cons in the favour of the musical gig, and went to the audition at a place called The Drum in Doncaster. Don't think The Drum exists anymore. It's a pub on the outskirts in Bentley, I think, of Doncaster. And where I first met some of the musicians that would be friends for many, many years. And one of them still to this day, in fact, the drummer in Christie, Simon. And my first band leader, Jim Percy, who was hugely influential on me. And we did the auditions, and I played a couple of songs. I think I did Easy by the Commodores, sang and played it. And then he took two of us, after there was a lot of people there for the audition, and he took two of us down to the Golden Egg. And at this point, I still had no idea, because having lived in the cocoon of the Derby music scene, I had no idea whether I was any good or not. I'd not really pitted myself against people out of the area. And I just remember sitting across the table from Jim that day, and he said, well, you're in. And from that day to this, it's been my profession, and that's 41 years. So I'll never forget that moment. It was hugely important, and it's hugely important because it actually, from the outset, gave me 2 years solid, professional, well-paid work, and I suppose conditioned me to believe there was the possibility of a life earning a living as a musician. And so that place is very, very important to me. They should put a blue plaque up there. Well, probably don't deserve a blue plaque, but at least, put a plaque up commemorating the Golden Egg, because when I think about it, I wonder how many bands have broken and been formed and ideas tabled, sat in places like the Golden Egg. It was probably the breeding ground for a huge amount of music and ideas that came about in the early days. And I suppose, to circle and close the story today, all these places have disappeared, and now the venues are disappearing because of the times we're living in. And we shouldn't forget these places, not just the venues, the cafes, the meeting places where ideas are thrown around and germinated and magic is born. Till next time, folks, take care of yourselves. Have a coffee on me.
It's been so long since I've done a Bishop's Daily Bread. I've got various bits and bobs to update you all on in the coming weeks. I won't do it all in one go today, though, don't worry. Today, just a very quick mention, I've got a new venture. Bread rolls, but brioche bread rolls. So rolls enriched with butter, egg, milk, then egg washed and then dappled with sesame seeds before baking. Looking forward to trying these out with a nice barbecued burger later on, enjoying this summer heat the UK is enduring right now. Anyway, lots of chats this week already, so we'll keep you in suspense, and you can look forward to hearing more about my baking exploits in the coming weeks. So that's it for this week. Thank you for listening wherever in the world you are. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify. The next episode will be out next Friday. Join us on YouTube for the Anglo-Americana show and become part of the Anglo-Americana movement. Head to youtube.com/The Vagabond Way. That show starts in a couple of weeks. Find The Vagabond Way or Steve Bonham on the Long Road on Facebook. All of our music is on Spotify and Apple Music as well, so go and have a listen, give us a follow. If you like what you hear, share it with your pals who might like it as well. We're on Patreon at patreon.com/The Vagabond Way. A big thank you to our Patreons and a special shout out to Orla Flynn, James Lydon, Yvette Lydon and Trish Taylor. Thank you for supporting us. So Patreon is a great platform that makes it super easy for anybody out there, you, to support content that you love on a monthly basis. It gives you direct access to the people creating the stuff you love, us, hopefully, and you get to play an integral part in shaping the direction of the things that we make. So become a Vagabonder. That's our name for our supporters on Patreon, to help us create music, live performances, books, short stories, this weekly podcast, the YouTube show, and some new things we're cooking up. As a Vagabonder, you can get the recordings and books we make for free, receive exclusive Patreon-only merchandise in the post, get regular behind-the-scenes updates from us, unlock access to exclusive live-stream performances and Q&As, and lots more. You can help us create something different, something that entertains, and something that inspires others. So, join us on the journey and release the vagabond within. Patreon.com/The Vagabond Way. Thank you once again, brave adventurers, vagabonds and explorers, for joining us on The Vagabond Way. Remember, the world isn't beige, it's authentic, it's rich and it's real. Embrace every last bit of it. Until next time, the journey goes ever on with The Long Road. Bye for now.